Here we go. It's time for another one-off sprint zone. This runs for 10/21/2025, and this is the County Road 13 sprint zone. I had posted the Ptarmigan one a few days ago, and Elisa was like, I like when you do all the sprint zones. So I figured I would do this one since, I had most of the telemetry. And honestly, that Ptarmigan one was pretty boring. And so to make up for that, here we go. And we have, once again, my telemetry along with JC's, Byron's, and Ron's. As we get into the melee, we round the corner here, and Marcelo is up the road. And I don't like when he does this because it's like a carrot. People have squirrel or bunny syndrome or whatever, and plus he gets to rest, while everybody else is starting to, maybe do a little work to chase him down, which in my opinion is kind of unfair. It's one of those things that people do in the Tour de France. They'll send a rider up the road so that when their GC guy gets there, he's got help. But in any case, I digress, and back to the action. Good shot of Jamie there in the Rio kit. Good shot of Daniel and Byron sitting there together. Byron's cape flapping in the wind there. Watts being burned off, but he's got watts to burn. So people are still up the road. JC was going to go after Marcelo, and he looks back and hey, nobody's coming. I'm not going up there by myself, because he himself could probably just walk away. He likes to be in the mix, the social group, unlike some of the other groups. There's a camaraderie here, and it's different than just full out melee, beat your brothers down. Daniel decides to go to the front, and he's had enough of Marcelo being out there, and he's going to bring him back. JC slots in, Kurt's behind him, and I'm in a reasonable position. I don't know if people noticed earlier on, Ron Kennedy was maybe fourth position, but he kind of cheekily slotted back to get himself a better position there and not be close to the pointy end of the stick where watts are being bled off. But in any case, we are in full gallop. Good shot of Tony there with his arrow helmet. Kind of looks like one of those Romulan helmets that from the Star Trek series. Byron signaling. We got Jim Almond on Byron's wheel, a good wheel to be on. Jamie, the tenacious Jamie, sitting in there tight. And there's Marcelo finally reeled in. I don't know what to say. In any case, we are going to just let him go by the wayside here. Up front, we're still doing a reasonable tempo. It's not super hard, but it's not super easy either. And there was a slight bit of wind, 26 miles an hour, and you can see the power being thrown out like me, 126 for 30 seconds, which JC, 120 for 30 seconds, Ron for 40, Byron at 80 something. So you can see how good the draft is far back. And I've spent time in the back of the pack back there, sitting in on some of the, TFR rides or whatever. And, it's a big deal for a lot of people to hang in. But hanging in at 90 watts is no big deal. And if you are saving yourself for the sprint, yeah, that's cool, right? You want to expend as few watts as possible so that you can just let it go. And I pretty much don't do that because honestly, that is my strength. And I'm going to be a little cocky here, when I'm in shape. And if I do that, you do not want to bring me to the line because I could probably throw out 1,000 watts or so when I'm in shape. Of course, people will probably hold me to that at some point, tease me about that braggadocio there. But just saying. So I prefer to bleed off some watts because, being mostly fast twitch, I need to learn how to get my slow twitch on. In any case, still out in the front, ramming and a thumping hard. 21 miles an hour as the hill. And here we go. The big dog, Byron. And you see the cape just flapping there. Good shot of him starting to position himself. Jamie Almond behind him. Looks like JC is thinking about making a move. And here he goes. JC makes the attack, does not stand up, and drives from the hoods. Technically, when you're sprinting, you probably want to sprint from the drops. You're more aero and whatever, but, it is what it is, and we're not in race training school today. Byron looking good, and there's my power. Over 400 watts for 30 seconds. 500 watts for 30 seconds. So I am, at this point, throwing it down, trying to stay in contact, and I'm like, everybody's still here. Ron, 400 watts for 30 seconds. was back there too far. And although he saved a lot of watts, too far to be in contention. There's Tony on my side, Steve looking strong, Marcelo sitting in, and I'm still throwing out reasonable watts, still at over 300 with 300 and some for 30 seconds as Tony gives up the ghost, Steve gives up the ghost. And here at this point, Marcelo goes around after sitting around, up front resting, and there goes everybody else at this point. I gave it my all, but we're pretty close to the top here, so I was pretty happy with my performance. We got Rick there violating the rules of engagement, but he did come back to me and apologize, saying that, people were in the middle of the road. And that's where I talk about people riding above their station. They get out in the middle of the road and they block people. And here's Steve kind of riding in the middle of the road. I'm like, be like a record player. When you're done, swing your ass over to the side of the road. Like, there's no reason to be out in the middle of the road. The car's not going to pass us, but the optics of you being out there in the middle of the road, not good. Because even if I was a motorist, motorcycle, car, whatever, I'd be looking at this and I'd be saying, there's entitlement with a capital E. In any case, a good time was had by all. Probably won't do too many of these because, it's time consuming. Although it's not as time consuming as just doing the first one, because once you have the telemetry, it's just about a few more minutes to ramble on. In any case, peace out, everyone.